The big thing is the cultural part in the sense of how you were raised. So, what you learned from home about money, how you learned it, and the ability for you to take what you've learned and implement it. Some of the things we learned growing up about money from our parents or whoever raised us or the communities that we grew up in is good. Some of it is not good. But I do think there's a huge link between culture and money. Often our relationship with money is influenced by how we were raised. So, for instance, if you grew up in a family that always said you must always look after money or never overspend or never share your money with anyone, then all of a sudden you find yourself doing the exact thing. If you were raised in a family that was very conservative from a financial point of view, hardly ever spent a lot on stuff, didn't spend on the materialistic things, were not glamorous, whatever, then chances are you're going to be the same. The real question is how that stuff influences your understanding of money, whether it's how to spend it, how to save money, and how to build wealth. If you consider our grandmothers, for example, for some reason, and I'll talk about myself, right? Growing up, raised by my grandmother for a good part of my life, throughout my life, she was very good at putting money away. It wasn't always a lot of money. In fact, it was never a lot of money from what I remember. And for me, it taught me in my adult life about the concept of always making sure that you've got a stash of something, whether it's under your pillow, whether it's in some sort of investment account, or whatever financial tool you're using. Now, in the moment, that's not really what you're learning, but somehow subliminally you are. That you must always be willing to put something away, right? Now, if you're raised in an environment where money is worshipped and it's glorified and it's attached to success and power and access to stuff, then there's a huge possibility that you are going to end up seeing money in that way. And the question is that going to work for you or against you in your adult life? That's hard to tell when you're a kid. Sometimes it's also about money and wealth and its ability to help you fit in, either into the family setup or even in just your community or society, your social status, your standing. Like in a family, there are people that earn a lot of money and there are people that don't earn a lot of money. So you might find that people who have a lot of money command more respect. They're listened to more. They're perceived to be successful purely because they are perceived to have the money or they actually have the money. There's an idea that when you have money, you must be able to, or you should know something. Because how did you make that money? Surely there must be something special about you, right? So in a family environment, if there's a family meeting, it's always the uncles with the money that get listened to, and the ones that seemingly don't have the money don't get listened to. And some of that stuff sticks, and it influences how we perceive money in the context of people and how we perceive the value of what wealth means. What does it mean to be wealthy? What does it mean to be rich? And all of those things. So I think there's a definite strong link between culture and money. The other big thing about it, right, is about what you do for your family when it comes to money. For instance, I started working when I was 21. I had never earned a dime in my life other than a small job here at a shop, etc. And now you're earning thousands of rand, working at a youth radio station, YFM. And all of a sudden I realized that I can actually earn money. Every month there's something coming in. And then when the DJing kicked in, it was every weekend money's coming in. So money, it's constantly coming in. But there's always this idea that you cannot make money and have it benefit you and you only. You've got to make sure that you send money back home. Now that's a cultural thing because that's how we were raised. We were raised that mutu ke mutu kabatu, which basically means you are who you are because of others. And that extends even within the family setup. Now, what that means is that if I'm earning 10,000 rand, there's a portion of that money that's going to go back home, whether it's to my parents or my grandparents or to my sister and her needs or to my aunt and her needs with her kids. And then all of a sudden, it just adds another dynamic and a layer to money and its role in our lives is that your hard work and what you get out of it, that the benefit of your hard work, the fruits are not just for you to have. And that's an important thing because we believe that it's important to give back to the environment in which you grew up in, whether it's at home or whether it's in your community. It's a huge pressure for people like myself as a media personality, because the question is, yeah, but what have you done for your community? Whether by virtue of your money or by virtue of your influence that you were able to bring about some sort of benefit through your fame and fortune to your community, in the context to your family. Now, this is important because it creates interesting things inside of you. The constant pressure to make sure that you're sending something back. But you have to see the joy in it. It feels good, right? People talk about black tax and they use all types of phrases. For me, it's like a lot of Black South Africans didn't grow up having. We come from difficult backgrounds. I form part of a generation of people that do have access to many things, and some of which is money. And money that can change lives, and money that can change my family's life and standing. So I see it as a great thing if one is able to take a portion of whatever they earn or make and send it back home for the good of the family, and for them to take themselves out of the position they're in into a better one. So the concept of black tax for me just puts a burden on that idea. Yes, it's pressure because sometimes the economy is not doing well and money stretches, and sometimes you find yourself having to make really tough decisions. Do I downgrade my car because I need to maintain whatever's going on back at home? But those are decisions that need to be informed by what you know, the advice you get, whether it's from people who know, from financial institutions, etc. So all of those things, and it gives you a sense of fulfillment. It also speaks to legacy. And there's also something to be said about what legacy you want to leave the day you leave this earth. You want to be known as somebody who built your grandmother a house, or you built your mom a whole new kitchen, or you refurbished the home that was falling apart back in the homelands where you come from. Whatever the story is, that's part of your legacy. That intersection of culture and money is a very busy one, and it's very layered. It's not easy to build wealth and still be able to make sure that you are sending money back to your community. It's not always easy. And it doesn't always happen throughout your entire journey. It can happen in stages, right? Some people don't understand. A simple example is the friends you grew up with may not be growing at the same rates that you are. They may not be progressing in life, even career-wise, at the same rate you are. And you might find yourself eons ahead of them, career-wise, in terms of success. And sometimes there's an expectation that when you are growing in your journey, you need to take everybody else with you. You need to take your friends with you. You need to take those people that used to give you taxi money when you didn't have. You must take them with, which in principle is a noble thing for you to do. Yes, all the people that were there for you, you got to be for them too. But it's not guaranteed that the space you're in creates a situation where you can do that. Some doors are open, but they're only open for one. There's another real pressure on a lot of us who are on this journey to take people along. And sometimes it is a good thing, and sometimes it's to your own detriment, because not everybody sees the vision the way you see it. I think it's okay sometimes to focus on yourself. And that's why personal development is key. Doing things that will benefit you and your personal growth and development. Whether it's career-wise, whether it's personal, whether it's issues around mental health, whether it's how to build wealth, how to build a legacy, how to be wise with money, all of those things. Some of those things are just for you and you alone. And when you learn, then you're in a position to then impart the knowledge, because now you know better. There are athletes that have to have a selfish bone in their body in order to be certified as a GOAT, in order to be number one, in order to be the greatest of all time, whatever the story may be. But there is still a greater benefit to the whole, to the team, in their own individual greatness, right? As long as they remember that this is not just only about them, but that their success and their achievements are as important to the greater whole as the greater whole is important to their success and their progress. There's a constant friction between your obligation to your family, the family that you grew up in, and your own personal goals. Now, I want to add in another dynamic. Now you're a married man with your own family that you're building. And yet, that family responsibility in the family that you grew up in doesn't just all of a sudden disappear. It's still there. But now there's someone in your life that you need to consult with, your partner. And it creates another dynamic because now there's goals that both of you have set. Maybe you want to save towards buying another house as an investment property, but you've got to put that off because my grandmother's house needs to be renovated because it's falling apart. I'll talk from a perspective as a black millennial South African man today. It takes longer because to get your first house, you first have to make sure that everything at home is sorted, that your parents' needs are covered. So you delay your own goals. Everything takes longer. So you might have friends that have the same level of qualification as you. Maybe you even earn more than them, but they are progressing quicker. They're getting properties at a younger age. They have investments at a much younger age because they don't have the same obligations as you. It becomes very frustrating when you have to keep delaying stuff. And it's not by your own doing in most cases. The reality is that the kind of lives that are set up for us they put us in a position where we constantly need access to money for something or the other. And a lot of it also has to do with whatever's going on back home, right? So when you decide on a financial product, whether it's savings, investment, you want something that will give you a really good return, but you also want to be able to access that money at any time because anything can happen and something can come up. And so it doesn't mean that you don't have a long-term view on stuff. You do, but you also have a pressing matter now, next week, next month that you have to deal with that sits squarely on you. And when you know that you can do something, it becomes very difficult not to do something about a situation that has now come up. So it affects a lot of how we invest, the kinds of investment products we go for. In an ideal world, yes, you can have investments and they can run forever. You put that money away, you don't want to see it for the next 30 years. And some people talk about different investment opportunities and in the stock market, whatever, all the things that are out there. Sometimes it's not that people aren't interested in that stuff or don't want to do it. It's that they're not in a position to do it because of the need to be liquid. And that if I want money, I need to be able to access it now because my sister's fees need to be paid at university. Otherwise, she's not graduating. And if she doesn't graduate, I still need to look after her. And so she needs to graduate so that she can go look for a job, so that she can be independent, so that I can be free. And that is the reality. So having constant access to money is very important. There's something to be said about lifestyle. Now, lifestyle is a massive concept in South Africa from a pop culture point of view, and it has a direct influence, I believe anyway, on how we spend money, how we understand money, and what we see money as, and also what we think money can do for us. It's perception. Everything is perception. So if I'm seen to be rich, or if I'm seen to have lots of money, if I'm living a very opulent lifestyle, then I have a certain social standing. I attract people, sometimes it's the right people who I can do business with. Sometimes it's people that want to be in my circle and help me spend my money and not really about me and who I am as a person. We also know the realities of what people earn in South Africa, right? And the top 1% and the top 10% and what their salary brackets are. Now, lifestyle has a huge influence on how we spend our money. And sometimes the pressure to be seen, looking cool, being in the right places, hanging out with the right people, seen at the right hotels, seen at the right holiday destinations, makes us lose sight of long-term financial goals. COVID has taught us that your career can end because of a pandemic. So you don't know what the future holds. So I think this lifestyle element has a huge influence on how we relate with money because we make more short-term impulsive decisions to spend 30 grand at a nightclub on a good time instead of taking that same money, even half of that, and putting it away to say, you know what, I'm going to put this into something and hopefully it will mature, it will grow and give me something in return that I can be happy about in the next 3, 4, 5, 10 years. And I understand because as human beings, we have this basic need to belong. And money, some people believe, gives you belonging because it allows you to be in certain spaces. And sometimes it's just about the perception. Sometimes it's what you do for a living and where you work. Some people use that. Like I know being a media personality has helped me open doors and sit in rooms that I would have never been able to sit in where I just an average job. But money also does the same thing. Whether it's money you have or money you create the perception on having. And because of this constant need to look like you are living a certain lifestyle, it then creates a situation where we end up having a very risky relationship with money. I think it's worse when you realize that what you did with your money just had no benefit, even on your own happiness. The future is key. Thinking about wealth and legacy is as important as thinking about whatever designer sneaker you're going to be wearing. Those of us like myself who've got kids have to think about that stuff and make sure that I'm able to do something in the way of securing their future. So the lifestyle aspect has had a very dangerous relationship with money from what I've seen. So the thing about debt is this, and I'm not a financial expert and all of those things, but I've often heard and I've done plenty of topics on this on many radio shows that I've done in my career. And you speak to a lot of people from the financial sector and financial experts, and they talk about good debt and bad debt. If you're getting a home loan, if you're going through the bank, for instance, that's a good thing because eventually you're going to own that home. It's going to be yours. But the problem is that when you live beyond your means, you end up going out there and looking for money elsewhere. And then you find yourself in debt. And often that debt just piles up. 1 minute you owed one institution, the next minute it's 5, 6. People go through incredible experiences in terms of that. I think it's important for us to take a moment and rethink our relationship with money. And first of all, understand ourselves as people, right? You are not money. You are you. But what you have around you is then what influences what you do with, say, money. So you need to know who you are, what makes you happy, what is important to you, because that has an influence on your financial decisions, right? You got to rethink the way in which you connect with money. And I think this concept of rethinking has to be constant. It can't be once off and then you're done. You've got to constantly revisit it as a professional. Right? You may have studied and you've got your competency in whatever skill or trade, but it's important to revisit what you know. So you've got to constantly rethink, revisit, reevaluate, have conversations with yourself. And also think it's okay to make mistakes financially. And it's okay to be honest with it, but also not kill yourself over the fact that you spend an extra 1,000 Rand last night when you'd only really budgeted X amount. I think in my personal experience, and by the way, I've started all over again so many times financially, where I'm like, all right, this is it. I'm starting all over again, and this is now going to be me. Because it's born out of this idea of having to constantly rethink, which means that you've got to figure out at different stages in your life what matters. I need to know that if there's anybody in my family, my children, my wife, that wants to do something when they need to do it or when they want to do it, however they want to do it, that they can. So it's almost like that certainty. So what I'm looking for now and what I work towards is certainty and security, because that is the stage that I'm at in my life where I feel like that is most important. I want to feel like should I leave this earth tomorrow, there'll be something left. That life won't change for my children, that they will have the life that I've always wanted for them, even in my absence. And that is what matters to me. So it changes my relationship with material things. It changes the way I see meaning and the value of long term. I cannot point to one single person that has taught me everything about money, about wealth generation, I've learned from everybody. In my family, people that have been successful and messed it up. In my family, people that have been successful and are still successful in my family, friends, younger, older, grandparents, people in the industry, people that I have looked up to and have given me simple advice. I've learned from everywhere, and I think we can and should learn from everywhere in terms of what the right thing to do is in terms of being wise financially and also being mindful in terms of your wealth and your legacy and your future. It's very interesting when you talk about investment in general. And I won't speak for the entire Black population of South Africa. But what I have realized is that, for example, with like hedge funds, right? The idea seems to be very exclusive. It's unattainable. People feel that they can't access that space. It seems like there's a barrier. Oh, okay, this is only for white people because somehow they've got the money to do that kind of stuff. And also, then you talk about the education part of it. First of all, what is a hedge fund? What does it mean for you in terms of when you are looking to invest and play around a bit and see how the returns look at the end of the day, whatever the story may be? I think it's about things that haven't been in our space growing up. And maybe it's a generational thing as well, where millennials were not really exposed to the language. And when you are finally exposed to the language, it just feels like a completely different world. A world that is not meant for you, and that a world that you really don't have access to. So I think there's got to be a great deal of education, because if you are in a space that you're looking to invest, you've got choices to make. And of all those bouquet of choices, which one makes the biggest sense and the best sense for you? And what position do you need to be in to be dabbling in spaces like hedge funds, etc.? So I think there's an element of education, and there's also an element of access. For some people, it's just like, it's too complicated. For some people, it's, I don't trust it. I don't see how it works. Not that I don't trust the people or the brains behind it, but it's not tangible. And maybe that's what it is. It's about making it real as a choice to people and for people, and also making it tangible. And I think with time, from generation to generation, there'll be a deeper understanding, maybe within the Black community, around the various options that you have in terms of how to invest money and what position you need to be in. The thing about finances and your wealth and investing is also trust. You got to feel like you trust the institution that you're putting your money into, whether you're saving it, whether it's investing in the top 40 companies on the JSE. You've got to feel like, I'm going to put my money in. Not only is it going to stay there, but it's actually going to grow. And it's going to become something that I can take one day and say, it worked. And so there's got to be a sense of demystifying some of these tools, these investment tools that exist out there, or investment products for people. I've gone down many roads where I've gone through 32-day accounts, because you can see the money, it's there. Oh, okay, there's my money, a little bit of interest, whatever. Oh, great, let's keep moving. And I've also found myself saying, all right, top 40, I love that. Let me put my money there. Oh, it's the top 40 companies on the JSE. It sounds like something's going to happen here. But in every instance, somebody has told me to try it. And so sometimes it's not about, and it may sound weird what I'm saying, it's not about what the institutions, the financial institutions are saying. It's about who in your life or your community and your circle says that this is what you need to do. There's also a huge room for misinformation and creating more problems than actually solutions, but there's great power in word of mouth. And a lot of the things that we do with our money are also often as a result of the advice or the referral or the input or suggestion from someone else in your life that you trust, a friend, a colleague that you think is wise, someone in your family that you think is a great mentor, or whatever the case may be. My feeling is, when you are dealing with a financial advisor, for example, it is important for them to demonstrate that they know what they're talking about. Because, like when you go to the dentist, you don't want somebody who is seen to not really know what they're doing. So, we often say that with things like money, you don't mess around. If you're going to bring in a financial advisor, they've got to know what they're talking about and they've got to make it clear to you. They shouldn't pitch it as something you need without understanding exactly what you need. So I think there's got to be a greater effort in understanding you. A financial advisor has to understand you. And there needs to be a relationship that gets built. And it's tricky because sometimes you don't have all day. But I think things like track record, reputation, work that they've done before adds to their credibility. It's also things like association, the institutions they represent. For example, are they names that people know? Are they well known? Have they been in the media space? Have they been interviewed? Are they considered thought leaders? All of those things play a role. But I think for me personally and fundamentally, you don't have to be this hotshot financial advisor who's been written about and who's been interviewed. If you know what you're talking about and you understand my needs and my perspective and help me tailor whatever I need based on what my life looks like, then that for me is more value than anything else. It's about the substance. It's about what's being said and how they understand your life and your situation. I don't have a silver bullet or an answer, with any sort of, definition on how a financial advisor can get to know you and ask you the right questions. But it's having these conversations, regular conversations with people about finances, about the understanding of finances and investment, and getting a sense of things. It's almost like when you read the mood of a nation, yeah? Then you get perspective. All right, so this is the thinking. This is the mindset, because then it helps them pitch themselves to people better. But when you go with things that are not tangible, and sometimes research doesn't tell you everything you need to know, even about a group of people, misconceptions about Black people and how much they earn and what they know, what they don't know, what they like, what they don't like, all of those things. All that stuff is part of the problem. So it's about spending time in the spaces that you want to activate in. It's about creating spaces where you can have open dialogues with people about the stuff. Otherwise, you'll never know as a financial advisor what people want advice on. Sometimes people don't know that they need advice. Sometimes people don't know what advice they need. But I think if you get an essence of where people's heads are, what pulls their strings, both in the heart and in the mind, then you have a better sense of getting to know a lot more and getting more insight as to how to connect with people. My reason for interacting with any financial institution is based on the work they do and whether they're credible and whether they're people that I trust who have interacted with them before and what their experience was like. If, yes, they have initiatives that involve, saving the planet, saving animals, or maybe even just uplifting communities, that's a great thing. And that's something that I would commend regardless of whether or not I'm dealing with that financial institution. But for me, personally, the biggest thing is my money safe? Are you going to give me the right advice? Are you going to expose me to professionals in your institution that are going to help me make better decisions and show me things that I didn't know? Answer my questions clearly and leave me comfortable in the end of it all, or whatever. That's what matters to me. It is always important to be mindful of how you communicate, how you speak and interact with different racial groups in our country, how you interact with Black people, the context of Black people in terms of where they come from as a general population, from being disenfranchised, not having access to now having access to the largest extent, but still having barriers. And what does that mean? Does it mean that there's a lot that Black people haven't been exposed to in terms of finances and wealth building? That is important to know. But to know that you have to immerse yourself in Black communities. You have to understand where Black people live, what their realities are. But also, you have to deal with Black people as people, ultimately. Because I don't think there's any Black person that wants a person white, for example, to say, okay, you're a Black person and therefore I'm going to deal with you in this way. That in itself is problematic. You want the respect from someone and obviously give the same respect. So let's deal with people as people. But from a cultural perspective, I think it's important to understand the context and the cultural context that Black people find themselves in and how that influences decisions they make. Do I buy a piece of land or do I invest in a hedge fund? And what informs that? All of that stuff. Is it about what matters to me? And is what matters to me on the basis that I'm Black? Or is it on the basis of the way I was raised in whatever community that I happen to come from because of whatever the situation was in the country? And so I think it's very important, and there needs to be a concerted effort, I think, from the financial institutions to try and really understand the context, the cultural context that Black people find themselves in.